Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is clear C-spine. So can you look up for me? Can you look to your right, to your left? Can you bring your right ear to your right shoulder, left ear to your left shoulder, and then can you look down for me? Okay, so that's all good. So the next thing we do is clear shoulder abduction. So can you bring your shoulders to your side over your head like that for me? Perfect, there's no pain. So then we go into active range of motion for the shoulder. So first we do shoulder flexion. So can you bring both of your arms in front of you to over your head for me? Good. And then can you bring your arms over your head to your sides like that? Yep. So that's shoulder abduction, flexion, and then can you bring both your arms to your side like that for me? And then can you go in? And that's internal rotation. And then can you take your both of your arms and then put them behind your back for me? And then that is external rotation, shoulder extension, and shoulder adduction. So next up would be isometric resistance testing. So first we'd start off with abduction. I'd be standing by his side. So can you just put your arm out a little bit for me? Okay. Hold, don't let me move you. Perfect. So that'd be testing his deltoid and supraspinatus. Then we're going to do adduction. So hold, don't let me move you. Perfect. That's going to be testing his pec major, latissimus dorsi, and teres major. Can you put your arm by your side for me? Okay, now we're going to resist lateral rotation, which would be infraspinatus and teres minor. So hold, don't let me move you. Good. And then medial rotation, which would be subscapularis. Hold, don't let me move you. Good. And then can you put your palm up for me? And then we're going to do elbow flexion, which is the biceps brachii. So hold, don't let me move you. Good. And then elbow extension, which is the triceps. Hold, don't let me move you. Good. So the first muscle we're going to be testing in the shoulder eval is the supraspinatus. So the first thing we look for is a painful arc in the patient. So can you please raise both of your arms over your head for me? Okay, so we're positive for no pain, we're negative for a painful arc. So the next thing we do is the Hawkins-Kennedy impingement test. So I'm going to flex his shoulder to 90, flex his elbow, and then I'm going to flex his shoulder and apply internal rotation, try and stuff it in his face. And that is negative as well. We're then going to do the drop arm test. So I'm going to raise his arm up to his side and drop. So a positive test would be an uncontrolled adduction of the arm, but it's a negative test as he can keep his arm up. The third and final test would be the empty can test. So can you bring your arm up in front of you with your thumb pointing down? And then I'm just going to move it real quick to here. And then just hold, don't let me move you. And then the empty can test is testing for the supraspinatus as well. And then lastly, palpating it, it runs in the supraspinous fossa of the scapula to the greater tubercle of the humerus. So the next muscle we test after supraspinatus is the infraspinatus. So again, we'd first start off with the painful arc test. So can you raise both of your shoulders, both your arms above your head for me? Perfect. And then again, we would go with the Hawkins-Kennedy test, which tests for the anterior impingement of the shoulder. So we'd flex the shoulder to 90, flex the elbow, and then we'd apply an overpressure of internal rotation. And then for the infraspinatus, we would do isometric testing again for the infraspinatus. So can you put your arm by your side for me like this? And then I'm going to push in, so hold, don't let me move you. Okay, that's perfect. And then lastly, we would palpate the infraspinatus, which runs below the scapular spine in the infraspinous fossa. Next up is the subscapularis. So first, we would do a painful arc again, even though it may not be positive for the same reasons the supraspinatus and infraspinatus is, there's still going to be pain in the anterior shoulder. So can you bring your arms above your head for me? Perfect. Next is the Gerber liftoff test. So could you face the wall for me? Can you put your right arm behind your back and then lift off a tiny bit? And I'm going to apply some resistance, so hold, don't let me move you. Okay, that's good. Next up would be isometric resistance of the subscapularis. So can you put your arm by your side for me? And then hold, don't let me move you. And that's strong. And then lastly would be palpating the subscapularis, which sits under the scapula. And it wraps around the front of the humerus. The next muscle up would be the biceps muscle, and there's 3 tests for that. To start us off, we're going to do the Neers test, which we would just take his arm and apply passive shoulder flexion with overpressure. So we're going to take it up, and then overpressure. If there's pain, that means you have a lesion on your long head of the biceps tendon. The next test is the speeds test. We would have your elbow slightly bent, and we'd be resisting shoulder flexion, so try to bring your whole arm to the ceiling for me. And I'd resist it. That's good, strong. And the last one is the Jurgensen's test. So start with your elbow bent for me at a 90-degree angle. So I'm going to push down, so just flex your bicep and resist me, and I'm going to apply some external rotation on you. And perfect. That's the biceps. Next up is testing for a labral lesion. So the first test we're going to do is the O'Brien's test. So can you bring your arm up in front of me? We're going to twist this thumb to the ground, applying pronation, and then we're going to resist, so hold and let me move you. So this should cause more pain, and then when we twist their hand or supinate their hand up and hold and let me move you and apply resistance, there should be less pain, indicating that there's a slap lesion when overpronating. The next test is the anterior slide test, so can you put your hands on your sides for me? And now from here, I'm going to palpate with my left hand over his AC joint and apply an anterior and superior pressure at the elbow and feeling for a click. So next up for testing for labral lesions, we have the grind test, where we take the patient's arm, we apply an axial load into the GH joint, and then we apply internal and external rotation. So I'm going to stabilize here, apply an axial load, internal, external rotation. The last test we have is the jerk test, where we apply an axial load and then passively adduct, and we're feeling for a clunk. So passively adducting, no clunk. Next up is testing for glenohumeral instability. So the first test we're going to do is the Salk sign. So I'm going to stabilize up here. I'm just going to roll this up real quick. And pull down on his arm, and we're going to look for a sulcus, or the glenohumeral head pulling away from the scapula and AC joint. The next test is the apprehension test. So we're going to take your arm up to 90-90 next to your head for me, and we're going to passively externally rotate. So I'm going to stand here and passively externally rotate. And then a positive test is patient shows apprehension or reproduction of symptoms. So the next test we would do for glenohumeral instability is the relocation test. So we're going to take the patient's arm, abduct it to 90. We're going to apply a downward force on the humerus and then externally rotate it. I'm not going to do the anterior release because it will cause the patient pain, but I would remove the force I'm applying with my left hand on the humerus. And then the last test, the posterior apprehension test, would be to have the patient, you can flex at your elbow, thank you, or bend at your elbow, and then provide a downward force while stabilizing the scapula, and you'll be looking for a clunk. So last but not least would be testing for the AC joint. So you test this bilaterally, but can you just take your hand to the opposite shoulder for me? And if it's a positive test, there'd be pain, and then I would also palpate the AC joint, which is right, you can put your arm down for me, which is right here at the tip of his shoulder.